Okay, hopefully this is working. I'm having some weird video things. So, for Black History Month this February 2024, I'm an art history teacher, and I thought I would do a brief recorded video for every day of February introducing a significant artist from art history. So, today, for February 2nd, we're going to talk about Edmonia Lewis. Edmonia Lewis is born in 1844. She dies in 1911. And a little background on her: her mother was an African Native American woman, and her father was an African American man. So she's also representing Indigenous people in the arts as well. She's born in upstate New York, and she comes from a creative background. Her mother was a very skilled weaver in her community. And unfortunately, Edmonia is orphaned at a young age. She's raised by two maternal aunts from a young age. Her given name was actually Wildfire, which is very cool. So, Wildfire Lewis. She changes her name to Edmonia Lewis in 1859 when she was admitted to Oberlin College. So, she wanted to pursue art as a career. She was able to be accepted into Oberlin College in 1859. Oberlin was the first American college to grant degrees to women and one of the first to grant degrees to African Americans. Um, and Edmonia Lewis is able to attend there partially because her brother, Samuel Lewis, made a fortune in the California gold rush, and he was able to pay for her education, which is pretty rad. Despite her financial advantage, she was one of only 30 students of color and was subjected to horrible racism while at Oberlin. She had a very bad time there. She was accused of theft, she was attacked, she was accused of all kinds of ridiculous things, and her experience there was not very nice. So in 2022, she was awarded a posthumous degree by Oberlin because she never finished her degree there because of her horrible treatment. She moves to Boston in 1864 to pursue her career as a sculptor. She was instructed in sculpture by Edward Augustus Brackett, who specialized in marble busts. So when we're talking about bust, we're talking about like the head and shoulder region of a figure, and it's a kind of sculptural portraiture. She sold enough work to finance a trip to Rome in 1866. This is a huge step for her career. She's very influenced by her time in Rome. There she works with another artist named Hiram Powers, who was a little bit more established of a sculptor at the time. She spent most of her career in Rome. She decides to stay in Europe and not return to America. You can see the influence of classical sculpture in her work. She's also using classical techniques. She's carving sculpture out of marble, Carrara marble, in fact, the same kind of marble that is used by classical sculptors from ancient Roman and Greek times. In 1877, she was commissioned by former President Ulysses S. Grant to sculpt his portrait. So she actually sculpted his presidential bust. At the end of her life, she lived in Paris and then London, where she eventually passes away due to kidney failure. She's considered the first Black native sculptor, male or female, to achieve international fame. So she becomes a very famous sculptor. This work, which is called Forever Free, is titled after words from Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. One interesting thing about her is she did all of her work herself. So a lot of sculptors would make maquettes, which is like a smaller version of their work, and then would have a team of people who helped them fabricate it, helped them carve it, helped them produce it. She did not do that. She made her own maquettes. She did her own casting when she worked in casted materials. She did all her own carving in stone. She did it all. It's very uncommon among sculptors from any time period. But as a woman, she felt she had to prove her talent at each stage of production and show that she could do anything men could do on that same level. Had she been born earlier, she might have been considered a neoclassicist. I generally put her in with 19th century realism, but I think that she has some neoclassical vibes as well. Like the realists, her peers and most of her subjects are contemporary in her portraits. There are some exceptions. She has a famous sculpture of Cleopatra, for example, but she often chose subject matter that was personal to her in some way. In this particular one, we have a depiction of two freed former slaves, and you can see the thematic concept of the forever free being translated into the three-dimensional work here. She has some manneristic tendencies, meaning that she has some sort of non-realistic aspects to what she does. She exaggerates some of the physical forms for expressive content. For example, in this sculpture, his right arm is considerably longer than his left. Part of that is to help it seem more dynamic, to think about perspective and how it's distorted when we're viewing something from different ways. Look at her attention to detail in the human form, the way she articulates each fold in the fabric. Very well done work. So Edmonia Lewis, or Wildfire Lewis, one of the first African Native American sculptors to achieve international fame.